the spectrum. Who doesn't think that what Donald Sterling said and what his record reveals about him is unacceptable? So that was an easy one. When people say, well, this is an opportunity to open up a dialogue on race, here is where I think some people who work in this building ought to step up and say, you know what? That's a bunch of politically correct BS. What you really want, not you necessarily, Steve, but what people really want is a chance to repeat the same narrative. The less comfortable truths, the more complicated state of race relations and difficulties with race in America in 2014 as opposed to 1964 or 1984, that's something you don't want to wade into. So I don't know who, this side of David Duke, would have a problem in denouncing Donald Sterling. To me, it's what's the controversy? The guy's an addled old man who shouldn't own a team.
Can what you're talking about, the sort of more challenging conversation you're talking about, can that take place in our media and political culture today?
Well, it would take courage. You know, I put it this way, and you're setting me up for a type of punditry that I'm not setting myself up for, but I'm responding to your question. Remember back in 1972, you're probably too young rather to remember it firsthand, but people said Nixon was the guy who could go to China. George McGovern could not have gone to China because Nixon had the credibility as a relatively conservative guy and a staunch anti-communist, all right? It's only someone on the conservative spectrum who can say, you know what? It is not an affront to the Second Amendment, and no one's legitimate Second Amendment rights would be abridged if we had some common sense conversation about a gun culture run amok and had some common sense gun control, which wouldn't stop anyone from owning a gun to protect their home and family or for sporting purposes. But you need someone on the right to make that point. You need, and there have been some courageous voices, on the left to say, you know what, obviously, historically, the narrative of white racism and the oppression of black Americans is the overriding truth. It's the single greatest stain on our national history. It is still part of the narrative to one extent or another in different forms. But that narrative is much more complex now. And some of the issues that are afflicting black America are not the result primarily of white racism. That's a politically incorrect thing to say that somebody in this studio needs to say.